Hello, I'm Anthony. Today we're going to have a chat about using ToneX as a component inside Amplitube. Now I'm not going to give you a full tutorial on both of those products today. We're really talking about a very specific use case here, but I will give you a general introduction to Amplitube and ToneX and show you how I've used these two products to get myself a guitar sound that's much better than anything else in the box I've ever heard. I only really became interested in ToneX just a few weeks ago. I've only just installed it on my system, despite having owned it for years. So I'm going to do a brief introduction to each of the two packages, give you a quick overview of the processes that I went through to get set up and running, and basically outline to you a possible use case for ToneX in your system. I will also say right at the outset, just in case you might be watching this video under false pretenses, I'm not going to be discussing modeling at all today. I haven't modeled any of my equipment. That's not how I'm currently using ToneX. I'm using it as a drop-in component inside Amplitube. Firstly, we have Amplitube, which is a complete, all-inclusive guitar environment. Everything from plugging your guitar into the interface to the finished sound right at the end of the chain. Amplitube takes care of the lot. You can see a signal chain down here. This is a very simple signal chain, but it is capable of much more complex configurations, multiple amps and all sorts of different stuff. I'm keeping it really simple today. But what you're looking at here is actually a ToneX and Amplitube integration, because one of the plugins, this Clon Centaur emulation and the amp emulation, they've both come from ToneX. They haven't come from inside Amplitube itself. And if you have a look at the right hand side, you can see ToneX is the orange component. That's the currently highlighted, what you can see down the right hand side. So Amplitube is the parent container for the guitar environment. Inside the Amplitube environment, we then have ToneX, a second application, which is an impulse response based machine learning environment. Lots of words there that it's important to understand, at least to a limited extent, because IR isn't the absolute one-stop shop for all of your guitar-based needs. It can only handle linear response-based systems. In other words, something that has a static effect on a sound. Good examples are EQ, overdrive, distortion, treble boosting, effectively anything that has an instantaneous effect that can be modeled by capturing an impulse response. This is a process whereby you make one or more sounds. When you're actually doing impulse response captures for speaker cabinets, you do a sine wave sweep. As I said earlier, we're not worrying at all about the modeling process today. Just take it for granted that you can effectively capture the DNA of a sound. The only way that you can do it, though, is to capture a single instance at a moment in time. So you configure your amplifier with your particular settings. If you're going to plug in stompboxes, you can do that as well. You put your microphones in front of your cabinet and you capture that entire thing. That's that particular configuration of those particular components at that moment in time in that room. So it's a very specific thing. But what IR does really, really well is captures it more or less perfectly, so you can then replicate that sound with a very, very high degree of accuracy. Let's have a quick look at the ToneX application. So this is the environment in which, if you were going to do modeling, you could do it from inside ToneX. It's not something I've investigated at all. I'm using it as a plugin. So what can it emulate? Well, it purports to be able to emulate amplifiers. That's quite a challenge for an impulse response based system because amplifiers aren't linear. So what you're really doing is you're capturing that moment of that amplifier. Don't expect IR to emulate breakup very well because it can't. It has to capture a single moment in time, whatever that amplifier happens to be doing at that moment. So if you're playing very dynamically to the point where sometimes it's clean and sometimes it's breaking up, that's not what IR does. Of course, ToneX is a modeling system, and so if they have algorithms in the background that's emulating breakup, and I believe that's how ToneX works, that's fine, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that it's the IR that's doing that. The impulse response isn't. However, we do have amplifiers. You can see here's an emulation of an orange amp. If I just click on another one of these, there's a Fender Pro. There are all sorts of options in here. We would be able to, for instance, possibly blend different microphones together, choose what microphones we're having on the system. All of that is a part of ToneX. And so ToneX is a very rich environment for configuring entire guitar-based sounds. You even have the option to add things like noise gates or reverb or modulation. I'm not particularly concerned by those things because you don't get any of them when you bring it across to Amplitube. What you're getting with Amplitube is the tone model itself. So what's a tone model? Well, it's some combination of stomp effects. I've just clicked on a preset here that has an emulation of a full tone OCD. Amplifier emulations, in this case a Mesa Boogie, and then the specific cabs. They may or may not emulate the cabs as well. So those are the three elements that you're talking about: stomp effects, linear stomp effects, amplifiers, and cabinets. Now, depending on the product that you own, you're going to get different kinds of collections, different kinds of sounds. I have the ToneX Max package, which comes as part of the Total Studio Max bundle, which I own. And that gives me access to a ton of stuff right out of the box, installed as part of the application. At the top right of the ToneX interface, we can have a look at those packages. All these green ticks indicate the collections of emulations that I own. Here's the ToneX Max bundle, and you'll see all of these ticks. I don't, however, own everything that IK Multimedia have to offer. If we say show all collections, so that there's a ton of stuff with price tags here that I don't own. So these are additional collections that I could buy and install inside ToneX. Now, I only installed ToneX for the first time about a month ago and had a bit of difficulty actually getting it properly configured because I was browsing through these collections and I was seeing stuff that I owned. And when I clicked inside these legacy collections, I was seeing settings and options, names of presets that seemed to be available to me, and I could click on them and use them. But when I went across to Amplitube, let's have a look back over at Amplitube. Here we are back in the Amplitube environment, and if I click on collections and go to the list view, there's a load of stuff down here. Those two applications didn't marry up, and it turned out I had to explicitly download collections from inside the ToneX environment. If I remember rightly, when I clicked on this Alex Lifeson collection, this download all button basically seemed to populate it took quite a while to download a load of stuff. I don't know why that wasn't done straight out of the gate, but just as a heads up, this download all button might be your friend if you discover the stuff that you think you should own but you don't. In a little while I'm going to introduce you to Tonet as well. That's another important part of the system, but I think it's important at this point just to get these two applications working together. I need to show you a real world example of a ToneX environment. So here we have, as part of the Alex Lifeson legacy, we'll pick on this preset called Club and Country Lean. Now, can you see in the mixer I have both Amplitube and ToneX running? As you're going to see today, the integration between these two applications isn't perfect. It can be really confusing what you're actually getting out of the box. So we're back in Amplitube world now, and we're looking at the ToneX packages. Let's close this down so you can toggle between a list view and a graphical view with this little filter button that I'm hovering around with my mouse. Let's go to list view and let's do a search for that. What was it? Club and Country. So these are the sounds that came out of that Alex Lifeson collection that I had to explicitly download using the ToneX bundle. I'm concentrating this because it's really confusing. When you click on this ToneX tab inside Amplitube, you could be forgiven for thinking you have full access to ToneX. You don't. You only have a quite superficial perspective actually on ToneX. If you want to do any configuration or really deep work in the ToneX environment itself, you need to run the ToneX app. So I'm activating that now, jumping back over to the ToneX world. This is where I do my downloads, my configuration, any heavy editing I want to do in the ToneX world, I'm going to do inside the ToneX application. They are separate plugins. So over in the ToneX world, we saw that Alex Lifeson collection, which contained a load of tone models. So a tone model is this combination, remember, of stomp effects, amps, and cab simulations. ToneX then has the ability to build entire presets using those components plus more. You don't get ToneX presets inside Amplitube, so kind of give that up as a lost cause. You can only play with tone models. So here we are looking at the ToneX tone models, show all tone models, there it is. And now each time I click on one of these, it's going to load that amp emulation, that IR-based model inside Amplitube. So let's close the browser down. So this is the Alex Lifeson collection. There you go, with his little 2112 symbol. Plug my guitar in just to demonstrate. Now you're going to get a little bit of bleed through the microphone, so it'll sound a bit tinny, but basically in my ears that's got a really nice kind of crunchy, creamy sound to it. These ToneX models are really nice. Guitar's back on the stand. Let's carry on having a look at what's going on here. So this is the ToneX model that's been dropped inside Amplitube. Now there's an odd interaction between the amplifier and the cab section. So here's the cab section in Amplitube. Can you see we've got a Fender cabinet here? That's what was there before we dropped in this ToneX plugin. But if we have a look over at the ToneX world, this cabinet is supposed to be a Marshall 4140, and in fact it is. Back over to the Amplitube world. So basically get used to hopping between Amplitube view and ToneX view. So we're looking at a Fender cab here, but this cabinet isn't actually currently in use. Back over on the amplifier section, you can see that it's currently using the IR emulation that came across from ToneX. If I disable that cabinet, then the Fender cab takes over again. So I should emulate that, I guess. This is currently the Fender. Back over to the amp, turn the cab on. We're back with the Marshall cab. It's not pretty that it carries on representing the Fender there, so not great integration to be absolutely honest with you, but nevertheless I've just disabled the amplifier. So now we're using the cab, but we haven't got an amp emulator at all. Apart from that, what impact has this ToneX plugin had on Amplitube? Well, the simple answer is absolutely none at all. The rest of the signal chain is still exactly as was. You still have your mixer, you still have your ability to drop in other effects. So this is a phaser from the Amplitude side of things. At the risk of flogging a dead horse, I'll remind you once again, IR can't emulate time-based plugins, so you're not going to get an IR emulation of a phaser. It simply can't do that, because you can't make a single sound in an instant and capture what a phaser effect is doing over multiple seconds. So this phaser is coming from inside Amplitube. Here it is, here's the Fox phaser. This clon centaur, however, has come from the ToneX world. When I clicked on the clon, the ToneX tab was highlighted. When I click on the Amplitube plugin, the Amplitube preset manager is highlighted. So Amplitube is intrinsically identifying which of these two plugins has contributed this single effect. So let's have a look at stomp effects inside ToneX. Well, if we're doing configuration work, let's go back to the proper application. Here's ToneX itself. We have our primary distinction between presets and tone models. We are interested in tone models. And now we can have a look at some of the filter stuff down the left hand side. These filters are great, I use them a lot. If we want to look at just stomp effects, we can highlight the stomp filter. And in fact, immediately you can see there are a couple of clon centaurs, KC, and I can search for the word clon. And now you can see a really nice representation of how impulse responses work, because these clones have been modeled with different tone and gain settings, and that's been baked into the name. So I've re-enabled my guitar to have a look at some of these. This is tone, mid, gain, min. Whereas tone high, gain, max. So there's individual knob settings for a single clon centaur that's been modelled with these different tone options. Note as we look at it, however, that all of these knobs always say 12 o'clock. That's a representation of flat. It's basically telling you this is how that effect was modeled. It's not telling you, it's not kind of identifying, because there's no way for it to, that this particular preset has the gain set to maximum. Having knobs on an IR-based model is kind of cheating. What's actually happening if you change any of these settings is that the modeler is taking over and doing some interpretive work. It's no longer giving you the perfect representation of that IR capture. It's ToneX, the application itself, that's using its own algorithm to do some tone modeling. So if I turn the gain all the way down, maybe not quite that low, so it's still really, really gritty. So that's a ToneX layer over the top of the IR capture. However, when we go to tone min, gain min, see all the knobs are still at 12 o'clock. So I can download all of these emulations, and I have 7 different snapshots of a real world Klon Centaur. I really like that low gain actually. Okay then, so we've got our 7 emulations of the Klon Centaur. Now we need to get them into Amplitube. So let's shut ToneX down, jump back over to Amplitube. Here are all of those different emulations. So these were installed as part of my ToneX installation. So if I make sure the plugin is turned on and go back to some of these settings, let's have a high gain, low gain, no gain. So now this ToneX plugin is sat inside Amplitube doing the same job. But of course this is part of my full signal chain. So this is now a ToneX Klon Centaur going into the amp model out of the Alice Lifeson collection. Sat in between those two things I have my Amplitube plugin, which I can also turn on. So this has got nothing to do with the ToneX world. And now I have a phaser as well. Switch that out for a small stone. So the two applications are working perfectly hand in hand with each other. Now we introduce Tonet and things get a little bit more confusing again. So Tonet is IK Multimedia's community environment for anybody to upload presets to it and share with the rest of the community. That of course means there's going to be a very wide range of quality of the stuff that's uploaded to the world because there's effectively no curation to it. Did you see that when I clicked on the Tonet, this light changed from red to green? That's Tonet logging in to my IK Multimedia account. And what you can see now is a set of Amplitube presets that could be downloaded, and that will use different amp configurations and stomps. What we're talking about here today, however, is ToneX integration inside Amplitube. And it's really confusing because when you're in Tonet, you can't download ToneX models. What you're going to get here is pure Amplitube presets. All of these options, everything that you can possibly see when it's saying searching for presets on Tonet, it's all just Amplitube internal stuff. So that's not actually what we want. What I want to do is to download ToneX captures from the internet. So in order to do that, I need to close down Amplitube. We're currently not interested in that. We do want to see ToneX, however. So this time when I go to Tonet, it's logging me in to the ToneX community inside the IK Multimedia world. And now what's popped up in this bottom browser is a collection of user uploaded presets, and some of them are absolutely fantastic. Now, because I've only recently become interested in the ToneX world, unbeknownst to me in April of this year, ToneX version 2 was released, and by all accounts the tones are superior, the capture and modeling is superior in version 2 presets. So I thought to myself, well, here I am at the beginning of my journey, I'm just going to concentrate on version 2 tone models. So I'm engaging the V2 filter on the left hand side, and then I'm going to engage some of these other options as well. I'm going to say I'm only interested in amp and cabinet combinations. So I want that overall amp effect. I don't want stomp sounds baked into my IR capture. I'll do them separately. I'll download stomp captures individually, but I want to keep things nice and simple for the time being. So what we're seeing in this curated list is just amp and cabinet emulations. And then the final thing that I did was headed over to this little sort icon to the left of all of the columns, because you can't sort by the columns themselves. You click on this little icon to the left hand side and you sort by most liked. So this is the community self-curating. And now we see some emulations that have had lots of downloads and a lot of likes. It's only just occurred to me actually that this sound that I've been playing with has delay and reverb baked into it. As I said earlier, I'm really not interested in doing a quality comparison. These are just very quick demos, but I will turn off the delay just to clean up the sound a little bit. Take a look at this liked column. Can you see that a couple of them have been highlighted orange? Those are presets that I've already downloaded. If I click on the Dumble Slow Waltzing preset, what I'm circling here with my mouse is a grayed out download button that's telling you that I've already downloaded and installed that ToneX sound into my system. If I click this Mesa Boogie sound instead, this hasn't been downloaded yet, so I make sure that if I download something, I'm basically previewing these, come across something I like, click like, then download it. So I'm keeping a one-to-one equivalence between those two things. How you manage your presets is up to you. But this Mesa Boogie sound, this high gain, if I play the guitar now, I've just turned on my guitar and you can hear Mesa Boogie ready to go. Yep, deeply violent, sounds absolutely wonderful, but I haven't yet got around to downloading that tone. I'll just turn my guitar off for a moment. So I'm going to prove that. So here we are in the ToneX environment. Take a note of Dumble Slow Waltzing, which is something that I have downloaded, and Mesa Boogie, and it's going to be Marshall something that I haven't downloaded. Okay, back over to Amplitube we jump. Now, the best way for me to find these actually is to click the V2 filter, because there aren't any version 2 presets installed by default. When you install ToneX, remember all of those collections you got? None of them are V2. So every V2 preset that you can see here is something that I've explicitly downloaded. There's my Dumble Slow Waltz. That's something that I have downloaded. It was liked in the ToneX world. And then if I search for Mesa, we do have some Mesa Boogie downloads, but none of the Marshall-based one that we were looking at over in the ToneX world. Okay, so I don't have that preset at the moment. Shut Amplitube back down again. I'm going to jump back over to ToneX. This plugin isn't active at the moment, but it doesn't need to be. I can still use it. Every time you shut this application down, it loses all of its filters. It's incredibly annoying. And this actually is true for, well, of course it is. It's going to be true every time you load Cubase back up again, or your DAW. You're going to lose all of your filtering and configuration options. So if you're working through a big list and you get halfway through and you want to go and have tea, when you close the application, just make a note of where you're up to, because you're going to have to reapply all of those filters when you go back in. Very annoying. So here's the Mesa Boogie model that I want to see. I can actually drag this curtain to see the full name of it, Mesa Boogie Mark IV. I could also click the info tab. That would do it, and that would allow me to see more information about this setting. So Mesa Boogie Mark IV, I'm going to like it. I'm going to download it. I'm going to shut ToneX down and jump over to Amplitube again. Now, if you had both of those applications open simultaneously, this might not auto refresh. You might need to basically kind of click out and come back in, but it does automatically install. And this sound, when I click on it now and re-engage my guitar, that sound is coming off my system, downloaded now and for all time, and I don't need to be on Tonet to see it. It goes without saying, of course, I've got access to the full signal chain. I've got my Clon Centaur feeding into that Mesa Boogie, just in exactly the same way that you would do with any set of presets for Amplitube. So this is a really, really powerful combination of effects. I ignored ToneX because I wasn't personally interested in doing my own modeling. I failed to appreciate just how good these IR captures are though, and it's a complete game changer from from the guitar tone perspective, I can't really imagine using baked-in amp models in Amplitube anymore. I'm just going to use ToneX IR captures all the way. One final thing I made a note of to mention to you before we wrap this video up today. At some point in the past month when I've been playing around with this stuff, ToneX deauthorized itself. I've got absolutely no idea why, but every time I loaded a ToneX instance into Cubase, I would get the intermittent white noise thing that effectively makes the plugin unusable. I had to unauthorize and reauthorize ToneX in order to make that go away. Reinstalling it didn't work. Relogging into the product manager didn't work. I actually had to fully unauthorize the ToneX plugin and then put it back on my system, and then everything was perfectly happy. Got no idea what that was all about, and it was very unsatisfactory. But anyway, that's how I went about solving it. Hope you found this video useful today. Please hit like if you did. I'll see you again. Thanks very much for watching.